like to start my story before 2015. It was a time when I was working full-time at a university. I was also the treasurer on a not-for-profit board and a partial caregiver for my mother. In the beginning of 2016, I started to have some very strange symptoms. I was driving my car and several times I crashed the right side tire into a curb. I also could not hook my seatbelt. I could not get the clip into it. So I called my physician, who had me come in immediately. She sent me the same day to an ear, nose, and throat doctor who saw my balance was off. So I have a relative who's an ophthalmologist who was more than willing to examine my eyes the next day. So he did. He said to me, "Has anyone told you you should have an MRI?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, I am." So he wrote the script. I made an appointment. So I went for my MRI. The radiologist had my son and I wait in his office. He called us in to say that he saw a mass on my brain. My brother is a retired neurosurgeon. So I called him up while we were waiting in the hospital, and he said, "I know a surgeon in New York City who you probably would want to do the biopsy that was coming next." And then finally had a biopsy. The good news is, if there is good news, is that it was a lymphoma, which means it was treatable. And so we started the progress of treatment. The other part of the good news is we found out the rest of my body did not have any cancer in it. So we were on a good start. We reached out to a specialized cancer hospital in New York and had an interview there, and I got admitted to their system for treatment. There I learned that lymphomas can be treated by chemotherapy. There was no need for radiation, no need for surgery. However, there was something like a 60 or 70% chance for a recurrence. The only solution they could come up with to the recurrent part was they were doing a research project on stem cell transplants. So I got interviewed by the stem cell doctor, and they did accept me, and they started with very, very intense chemotherapy that just wipes out anything in your body. And they then eventually do it like a transfusion. They put the stem cells back in. I stay in the hospital 45 days. I have a number of complications which got treated, and eventually was able to go to a rehabilitation facility for about a month. Now we get to going home. So I'm clearly weak. Anyone who visits me has to have a mask, on top of which there's constant monitoring of my blood system, my blood counts. I did go through 2 platelet transfusions. I also learned, and was very proud of myself, learned to give myself Neupogen injections to increase my white blood cell count. I went through a stage where my nails replaced themselves, my hair was lost, it started growing back in finally. Bringing up to current day, so that's just a few years later, I'm in the process of having MRIs continuously it was every 3 months and every 6 months. Now we're up to once a year. Things are looking good, there's no change. So if someone asked me what advice I would give them for someone going through this kinds of medical procedures, I would say first off, be your own advocate. If you hear something that you don't understand, ask. And also bring somebody with you at these meetings if you possibly can, because it's really hard to remember everything that's said while you're going through all of this. The other thing I would say is so many people wanted to be of help, and my natural nature is to say no thank you, but it's really useful to have people help you, get your food, visit you. People mean well. And so I believe having friends and family and support is really, really important. So in some ways I've gotten more involved in the research, and I read a lot about cancer research and cures and some of these new technologies that I just barely understand, but know they're very helpful and hopeful. If my diagnosis was 5 years earlier, I wouldn't be having this conversation. And more likely, if my diagnosis is going forward 5 years later, it would be a whole other conversation. I think that an organization like the National Foundation for Cancer Research, which takes donations and uses it to further the research, further the treatment of it, and hopefully the cure of certain cancers, is a very worthwhile pursuit.